Welcome to my pen review channel. Ah! Today we're gonna talk about pens. Ah! Ah! So, I'm not a pen review channel, but I was interested in these Pacific Arc knockoffs of the Rotring 600. I do a lot of drawing, mostly mechanical drafting for work, and I like these Rotring 600 pencils. And there was not a lot of information out there on the internet about these knockoffs, the Pacific Arc chromagraphs. There's also Q-Locks, and I believe Red Circle or other knockoff brands. I don't know if they're made in the same factory or different, so I can't speak to those. But I just wanted to take a look at these guys and how they compare to the Rotring. So I bought a bunch of these Pacific Arc DP1005, 1003, and the H1309, which is the 2mm lead holder. This one is a 0.5mm and this is a 0.3mm, just for drafting. I really like the Rotring 600. I bought this one for about $18. It's the most expensive drafting implement I own, and I tend to lose and break things even when they just stay at my desk. So the first thing I wanted to say about the Rotring, it's very nice. It's all brass, I guess, or some sort of heavy metal. You would think that this would make it an indestructible pen, but it has this wonderful needle tip, which is, I would say, like a character flaw. It's what makes it great. It means I can push really hard on a very fine piece of lead to get a nice dark line, but it also makes it very breakable. And so this all metal construction really doesn't do me very much good in terms of not breaking it. All the other models of Rotring are, $30+ on Amazon right now, and these are going for about $8. So I thought I would try some out and see how they work. They look a lot like the Rotring. Let's zoom in here. They're about the same size. The Pacific Arcs are a little bit longer and a little bit heavier. Their grip section is about the same diameter, although the knurling is a little bit nicer on the Rotring. It's still pretty nice on the Pacific Arc. Had I not used the Rotring, I would not be disappointed by this knurling, but it's a little bit more slippery than the knurling on the Rotring. The Pacific Arc is a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier. Couple of differences that I noticed. So the Rotring has a really nice strong pocket clip. The Pacific Arc has a very weak pocket clip. I assume I will bend this pretty soon, but that doesn't really bother me. I usually leave these in my desk because, like I said, because of the needle point, they're not really pocket friendly. Not a big deal to me. Also, the paint on the Rotring is very nice. Seems to be, something high quality and not going to scratch very much. The Pacific Arc came with, let's see if we can see this here. I don't know if you can see, but out of the box it had this little nick in the paint and some other paint defects, and I assume this paint will wear off. I don't really care. I don't care how these things look. I just leave them in my desk. I'm not one for fashion, but I thought I'd point that out. The other thing is this lead indicator. I put this tape here because it spins rather easily. I had it in my pocket and it just spun and spun. It's not going to spin on you from use, but if you put it in a pocket or whatever, you might want to put a little piece of tape on there. Likewise, I think the Rotring is a little bit tighter, but still pretty easy to move. I think it could be a little tighter. One thing that's kind of important, especially for small leads, is how much it extends every time you click it. So I'm going to give 10 clicks on the Pacific Arc. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that's about twice the extension as the Rotring. Let's do the Rotring now. Here's the Rotring. I'm going to do 10 clicks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we can look at them side by side. Not a major difference. Maybe something like the Rotring is extending only 75% to the Pacific arc. But I generally wind up using the Rotring with one or two clicks and the Pacific arc with one click. Not a big deal, but the mechanism is definitely nicer in the Rotring. Still totally usable and very good on the Pacific arc. The eraser is a little wobbly on the Pacific arc. Not a big deal. I generally use a big block eraser or an eraser pen from Pentel, but this is not great. If you look at the Rotring, there's a little bit of wobble too. Also not wonderful, but a lot better than the Pacific arc. Not a big deal at twice the price, but it's something I thought I'd point out. So I bought these Pacific arc pens in 3 sizes. This is the 0.3, this is the 0.5, and this is the 2mm drop clutch. So what I would say is this 0.3 is totally unusable. In fact, I'm going to send it back, which is why it's in the package. But let's take a quick look at why. So the machine tolerances on a pen or pencil are not really important to me until they start becoming important to me. So if we look at the tip here, let's see if I can get this, zoom in a little bit. This tip, which is what's most important to me about this style of pen, is a very small, like syringe tip. The deal with the 0.3 is that the machine tolerances are such that this graphite, I'm going to extend it a little bit more so you can see, but it actually happens even when it's just poking out, is, let's see if you can see that there. Zoom in some more. That lead just wiggles around, which with really fine lead, like a 0.3, that's just going to break. And I just, could only make the lightest and softest of lines with that wiggling around there. And so I'm going to send this one back. That's pretty useless to me. Let's see if I can show you with just one click. Hard to see, but yeah. That's no good. I would say definitely don't buy the 0.3. It's pretty worthless. You can't draw with it. Doesn't matter how cool it looks. Not a good pen or pencil. The 0.5, at least my copy of it, does not suffer from that. And that could be because the same tolerances on a almost twice the size piece of lead are much better. And so let's take a look here. Still, you can get a little bit of tip wiggle there, but very, very little, and that's with it way extended. Let's see if I push it back. It's hard to see with my finger, but yeah, that's, on the level of tip wiggle as the Rotring would have. Let's take a look at the Rotring. This is the Rotring now. Again, it wobbles just a tiny bit, much like the Pacific Arc, maybe a little bit less. But with the Pacific Arc Chromagraph, I don't really have any problems pushing hard on this piece of lead. So I would assume they also make, I think, a 0.7 and 0.9 millimeters, and I would assume that those are also pretty decent. Probably not up to the spec of Rotring, but now I'm just speculating. And so I would say the DP1003, the 0.3 millimeter, is not worth buying. Leave it. The DP1005 at $8, it's probably worth buying. I'm going to keep it. I like it. I will draft with it. But, for the $17 the Rotring cost in the future, I would probably buy the Rotring, although I have a different favorite that's way cheaper that I'll show you in a minute. This pencil is the gem. This is the H1309. It again suffers from that loose lead grade indicator, which I just put a piece of tape over. I don't really care. I leave these on my desk. It again has, you know, a weak pocket clip, not a big deal. But this is a drop clutch style pencil, and so that's the mechanism, right? It never has any wobble. It's nice and strong and heavy. It holds lead. It's got a pointer back here that's fine. I don't really use it. I use a Statler pointer. But anyway, for $8, I think this is a steal. I would never buy the Rotring for 30 or something like that. Same deal. You know, all metal mechanism. Yeah. So larger grades, good. The 2mm drop clutch pencil is great. Definitely do buy it. This one, the 0.5, maybe, but maybe buy the Rotring. The 0.3 is a total worthless piece. Don't buy it. One other thing that I wanted to point out is while I do really like the Rotring 600 and some of these Pacific Arc pencils, my favorite pencil is this guy. It's a GraphGear 500 PG 523. It's the 5.2 series is this guy. The 5.1 series has a slightly different lead grade indicator, but it's the same, you know, pencil down. And then the last number here, so 523 is 0.3, 525 is 0.5. I have a 0.5 here. And this guy also has the same style of needle tip, which fits extremely well. I can push really, really hard on this. Let's get it to focus. I can push really, really hard on this lead. It only extends just a little bit each time you click, which is excellent. And it's very precise. Let's compare the clicks of the GraphGear to the Rotring. So I'm going to do 10 clicks here. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now let's do the Rotring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so if we look at those together, let's get the tips lined up. So the GraphGear extends way less, maybe half as much as the Rotring, which I really like. I think that gives me a lot more control. One other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, I don't consider these indestructible pens if they're made out of metal. They still have this very fine needle tip. This plastic back I actually like a little bit more. It's kind of this balance issue. I like the pen to tip towards the table rather than away from the table. And so if we look at where this balance is, you know, oops, Pentel balances is a very scientific measurement, but the Pentel balance is right here, right by the grip, and the Rotring balance is a little farther back. Not terrible. They're both very comfortable to draft with, but I really appreciate the balance of the GraphGear. So one other thing I did for these guys is I printed some caps. So if I do put them in my pocket or throw them in my desk drawer with a lot of other things rattling around in there, they're not going to break the tip. And I think that's something that I wish Rotring and Pentel or whoever made and sold on these pencils, just so that they you know, would be a little bit more sturdy when you move them around. But you know, this is a pretty inexpensive 3D printed part. So for me, if it was between the Pacific Arc DP1005 or the Rotring 600 0.5 millimeter, I think it's like a little bit of a toss-up. This guy's about twice the price, $18 shipped, and this one's about $8. You know, I could go either way. Don't really have much of a preference. This is a little bit nicer at a little bit more than twice the price. But that being said, I think for $5.40 shipped, you can get this Pentel GraphGear 500, which I would pick over the Rotring at the same price every single day. So check this one out. It's a great tool. Okay. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe! For size comparison, here's a Pocket Jada.